Hey, folks. I'm here with Hayes Griffin yet again. I can't get rid of the guy. He's not here in person. Through the magic of Zoom, we are reunited once more. We're going to do a little guitar lesson for you, but I wanted to remind you all that me and Hayes do have a podcast, or rather, I have a podcast that features Hayes Griffin in every single episode. It's called Podcast with Marcel, featuring Hayes Griffin. We haven't put out an episode in a while, and that's it's because we're busy working on it. It's going to be so good.
Stop asking us about it.
We're recording the podcast word by word, making sure we get the perfect take of each word. And when we assemble it, you'll be really shocked by the results. So I taught the same lesson like twice in a row one day, and it was about finding blue notes. And me and Hayes were just talking on the phone. We were like, hey, why don't we get on a call and let's teach the people. Let's tell the world. They need to know. They need to know where those blue notes are.
It's like fundamental to the sound of like really any American genre of music. If you're not putting blue notes in there, it's like it ain't happening.
And the orange notes, the red notes, all those, you can forget about them. You don't use them.
No.
You use the blue notes a lot, though.
We're going to let the awkwardness of that joke settle in while I turn my AC off.
To find the blue notes, we first need to just know where all of our chord tones are. So we're going to be working over a G chord. We're going to find G chords all over the fretboard, and specifically, we're going to find triads. And triads have one of every note in the chord, right? So if you think about your big boy G chord, and you boil those down, you get rid of all the repeats and stuff, you end up with just G, B, and D. Now you can take that G chord, and you can just pop it into two groups of three. And one of those is a triad, and one of them's not.
Most definitely.
If you play that low group of three, you'll hear that you do have all three notes of the chord. In fact, you have them in order. You got 1, 3, and 5, or G, B, and D, right? But up here, I got G, D, and G again. What could I do to that, Hayes, to turn it into a triad?
Well, you could probably just change that bottom G note into a B note on your G string and give us the
exactly.
first inversion G triad there.
So we had too many G's. We could turn one of those into a B. And we couldn't turn the other one into a B. Well, we could, but
yeah,
no one wants
why?
to do that.
Why do that to yourself?
If you look at this voicing, like Hayes said, we're in first inversion, meaning that it's not starting on the root, it's starting on the third. 3, 5, 1. The neat thing about this is that if you think about this logically, you have three strings that are involved in this triad. Hayes calls this the 3 across triad. Somewhere on each string, you're going to find a root, you're going to find a third, you're going to find a fifth. Each string from open to 12 is only an octave, so you're only going to find those notes once, which is pretty neat. That means that if things clump together, we're going to find 3 different triads on each string set, this being our first string set. So, Hayes, where do you think that next triad is?
Well, that next one, like you said, if we use that same logic, right? We've got B, D, G, so that means this B note needs to turn into the next note in the triad. A D note, the D has to turn into a G, and the G has to turn into a B.
Yeah, you just trace everything up and you get the next triad. That's exactly right. You'll notice, too, that these triads, they hint at bigger chord shapes, but it's never going to be perfect. Like the chord I showed you in the beginning. This doesn't perfectly break up into triads. Similarly to this guy, kind of looks like this guy, who also doesn't perfectly break into triads. And the same goes for, up here. Or yeah, that one. Yeah, that one takes some work, not playable by human hands to turn it into triads. And you can follow that logic one more time. I'll do this one. So that D can turn into a G, that G can turn into a B, and that B can turn into a D. And I get that guy, who you may notice looks like your A bar chord. One string set done. Do you want to do the other string sets, or you want to start having fun?
I say start having fun and make them, you, do the rest of the work. You know that's how you learned them, dude, right?
Off of each of these notes, there is a blue note that's nearby. We're going to focus on the 3 most common blue notes, which in order of spiciness are the flat 3 or the minor third, the dirty third, the blue third. Lots of words we throw around for the same thing. And then we got the flat 7. And lastly, we got the flat 5. As a small rule of thumb, I'll say this. If you're using the flat 7, you're probably already using the flat 3. If If you're using the flat 5, you're probably already using the flat 7 and the flat 3. They sort of stack on each other. You get more and more aggressive bluesy sounds. It would be really odd to be playing a line and just drop a flat 5. That's not super common.
And if you're wondering why your lines sound weird and you're trying to use blue notes, that's probably why. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta have it with the other ones, you know?
So Hayes pointed out the stack that we had here when we found this one. 3, 5, 1. So right below our third is going to be our flat 3. I'll tell you a little bit something about how to use that flat 3 if you're struggling with that. Very rarely does the line go like this. That's not very common. Normally, the blue note gets paired with a buddy. So either 3 goes up to 4, B flat to B, flat 3 to 3, and then a G. Or you might get it like this. If you have that flat 3, you might go down to your second and then play the G. But it's not common to play the third, the flat third, and then a G. That would be really strange.
Yeah, it sounds odd even when you do that, right? It's like something's missing there.
You can practice that just by flip-flopping those as much as you can, right? There's only 2 examples. Or. Those are the ways that it's used.
Yeah, Mobius strip lick, right? Yeah, like don't know where to go next, so I'm gonna land here for a sec.
And then our fifth, right below our fifth is, you guessed it, flat 5.
I think about this one as kind of like it's a moving note, right? So it always goes somewhere in the way that blue third that we were just talking about. It either goes up into the major third or down through the second into the root. I think this one moves a similar way, at least the way that I see it. Like you can either like take it half step up into your fifth, you know what I mean, and then play. But then you see it go down into the 4, right? And then usually daisy chain with a blue third lick after that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, this is another one that gets a buddy. Or passing through.
Exactly. It's kind of unique in that way, right? Because you don't really do that one with the third so much, but the fifth is definitely,
Yeah. And then below the root, a whole step below the root this time, not a half step. You got the flat 7. This one's interesting because I don't think this one normally gets a buddy. This one is either played on its own, like, you know, as part of a little scalar kind of lick, or it gets a little chromatic passage down to it. I can't think of another common instance where I see it. It's normally used in those 2 ways.
I would agree with you, but you can obviously incorporate it into lines that do have passing notes around it, but it's not like necessary in the way
Doesn't
that
need it.
Yeah, that the other notes are, maybe, right?
So you could imagine root, flat 7, passing through to flat 5, dirty third. All the different ways you could put that line together.
Yeah, using that G up top as a pedal, that's like classic.
Yeah, that's how those licks work. And it's funny because it feels almost like Legos. I feel like when I explain this to people, they're like, really? That's like the only way the blue notes are used? But I hear it so much. I hear it in such creative, like complicated ways. And you're like, no, probably like 98% of the time you're hearing them.
Yeah, phrasing can account for a lot of variation on those moves that we just talked about, right? But it's pretty much that simple.
Let's come up with a little formula we can apply to all the triads. My idea, I want to do this. I'm gonna walk from the root down to the 7. I'm just gonna play the 5th. We're not gonna do anything to the 5th, and then I'm gonna slide into the 3rd. That's our lick. Now, if we go up to our next triad that we found, this one, you can apply that same logic, but all of your chord tones are now in a different order, right? This is the 5th. This is the one we don't do anything with. This is the root. This is the one that we're going to walk down to the 7th. This is the 3rd. This is the one we're going to scoop into. So you get...
Yeah.
That's a new line.
Yeah, and it's funny because it sounds like a call and response lick to itself right? Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's really neat.
This is definitely language that you can hear too.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear it all the time. In a greater context, you're like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so if we're going with the same logic, the D, we do nothing. It's just there, And then is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The lick was not made for the comfort of your fingers.
Yeah, exactly.
The lick was made in a lab. This is so much closer to how I actually think about triads and practice triads.
For sure. Because the triad is just like some kind of framework of notes that you're trying to mostly hit in a phrase or a lick, right? And then you have to use some other stuff to kind of move between the notes and make it interesting as a melodic statement, as a line, right?
It's more common for me to think like, right, here's my third, there's my flat five.
Yeah.
I got a third up there too. Maybe an enclosure around the third, right? What's up here? Right, there's my third.
Yep.
Those kind of like just little ideas. They don't have to be complicated at all. It's just me kind of mapping out like, oh, there's the chord tone and there's the neat thing right next to it. And that's so much more fun to me.
I think it's the quicker that you can start turning it more into a game of fun, like musical spontaneity, you know what I mean? Or something like that. It becomes a lot more relevant as opposed to just like punching triad notes out in a walking fashion. I think for me that helped to a point. You know what I mean? It was like once the map was installed, it's like, okay, I know that like those are the ones I want to hit. You know what I mean? But then it was more like what you're saying here. It's like, well, there's a way to use that note. You know what I mean? It's not just to know where it is and to play it, but it's like, you know what I mean? Even with just that one blue note, you've made the triad into something infinitely more musical than it was just by itself.
You also said that in a nice way. You're like, there's a way to use that note. It's like all the notes aren't really created equally. There's like special things about certain notes. We use them in special ways because they have a job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you want like that moaning, mournful sound, then you want a blue third moving down through the second into the root. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like, yeah.
That's what it does.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, so if you take your original triads, you look at the highest note there. We got a G up there. On the next string down, the one we're not using yet, you'll be able to find a G there. So I can just move that G down and I can find my, sort of in a vertical slice, I can find another inversion by moving that note down.
Exactly.
So this one happens to be root 3-5, right? They're all in order. And you can do that logic with this one too. We got a B on top. So on the next string down, I should be able to find another B, and I can find the next triad.
Yeah.
Same thing.
He's not explicitly pointing it out, but that is a good octave pattern to know, right? You know what I mean?
100%.
To kind of drop
yeah.
stuff down. So like, yeah, 2 strings down, 2 frets or whatever.
Let's come up with a new rule set. We'll play a lick through all of these shapes too.
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
How about like, tell me if this breaks your conception of the rules, but in this space, I find myself treating this blue third slightly differently than we did before. So we talked about going up into it, but I usually precede that with a 4 and then make an enclosure. So you, like, right?
Totally.
And then we can maybe even do your piece from before to get down to that 7, you know?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the enclosure is such a powerful thing.
Does that screw us up for the future, though? You know what I mean?
You're wondering if the rest of them will work out. No,
Yeah.
We've already committed. We've already committed.
We got to see. There's only one way to find out.
So we scoot up to the next one. Here I go. I'm starting on the root. I got to walk down. I do nothing with the 5th. And then the enclosure.
That's kind of a weird spread, isn't it, you know?
And a little bit of a reach.
How about this?
Ooh, Hayes is
You could
doing
stay in
something smart.
position.
Yeah, if you want to, if you want to take it to the next level. That actually points out something that is really nice too. So Hayes put the 7th on our string with the 5th. It points out that if your index finger is on the 5th, your pinky is on the 7th, the flat 7.
You can use that pretty much anywhere that you're grabbing that 5th, like you're kind of leading up to, I think, right?
So take that one, do something with that. All right. I guess you do that bar thing again. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm already thinking about, because it's like, well, that's an okay phrase, but it's like, what could I put on top of it or after it to make it something better, more interesting? You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I guess that means we're already moving on to the next step in the process, right? Like once you find a phrase like this, then like how do you put it in musical context?
So imagine if you daisy chained those together, right? If in your brain you were thinking about these different little triad chunks, and maybe you were thinking, maybe I do nothing with the root, but next up is my string with the 5th on it. Maybe I do that trick Hayes was doing with my pinky up there on the 5th. The enclosure, maybe from the root down to the 7th.
Yeah.
You can see how your lines get bigger and bigger as you keep playing with those things.
Love it.
What if it wasn't totally linear throughout, right? What if it kind of had that backstepping thing?
Yeah.
No reason not to do that.
It's almost like if you can hang on the notes for a little bit like that, right? You know what I mean? And create like a little bit of a Mobius strip or something I think about it like treading water. It's like literally like, where am I going to go? Okay,
Do you ever hear this kind of like scale thing that bluegrass guitarists do, where it's almost like they play like 4 notes of a scale with blue notes and whatever, and then they hang out there, they waste time, and then they play like the next 4 notes, and they hang out and they waste time. So you get like, you know what I mean?
Yes. Guilty.
And the phrase seems really cool. It seems really smart, but in reality, you're just like finding almost like the next little triad or something, the next little pocket that interests you, and you like phrase, and you move on to the next one, and you like phrase. Yeah.
Gives you a second to figure out how you're going to shift into that next position or whatever, shift down the string, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can like it's like a way to like move position to position too, and creep your way up the neck or something like that with a lick, right? Maybe even back down.
Chromatic down from the 5th could be.
We didn't talk about that, you know what I mean? But that is kind of a move, isn't it?
Yeah, what Hayes is talking about is that there's a chromatic connection between the 3rd and the 5th. And probably the most bluegrassy example is like the beginning of Foggy Mountain Breakdown. Is just 3rd to 5th. And it's also a common jazz line. I feel like that's a little bit of a cliche in the swing world.
No, and it's often exactly like you just treated it too. It exploits what we just talked about with the enclosure on the 3rd. It's kind of like you're using that blue note as a passing note and still kind of playing into the rule of the blue 3rd,
Yeah.
I even do it from like 7 to 5 sometimes, because once you mimic that motion, it makes it sound more like a good thing to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. That one's a little bizarro, but it fits because you did the one right before it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So you can bend space and time a little bit that way.
Okay, so if you did that for your next triads, we're not going to do these because, like Hayes said, you got to go do the work. There's good news for you when you go to do these. If you do it on your A, D, G string set or on your E, A, D string set, all the shapes are the same. They're going to be in different orders. They're going to be on different frets. But because you don't have to deal with that pesky B string, all of the shapes will be the same. So good news. Good luck.
There is less work than maybe you potentially thought.
Slightly less work.
It's kind of a dirty trick, though, too. I shouldn't say this, but like it's a dirty trick that as you go down on the strings, the shapes become the same because you actually use those shapes less and less.
When Hayes says less and less, he means almost never.
Okay, we did need to like really, depress everyone there, but
Well, I don't know how much of that outro made it into the video or not, but we said some terrible things. Thanks for watching, gang. Once again, check out Podcast with Marcel featuring Hayes Griffin. Also, why don't you check out our websites? Hayes, what's your website?
the one I want you to check out is hayesgriffin.club. There you can join my guitar club, chat on some Zoom calls with me every month. We can talk about triads and blue notes or something if you want. So, Marcel, what about you?
Yeah, while you're doing that, maybe open another tab. Maybe check out lessonswithmarcel.com. Or if you're Canadian, lessonswithmarcel.ca.
Ooh.
Which does not exist. I have no idea what that links to.
I'm buying it right now.
Anyway. Yeah, I got to go secure that domain.